The Franchise Affair by Josephine Tey is a 1948 crime novel. Not so much a whodunit, but a was it done novel set in rural just post World War II southern England. It's a case of a mother and a daughter. The Sharps are accused of kidnapping and a 15-year-old girl, and when she refuses to become their servant, beating her. The girl Betty Kane claims, and indeed she also claims that she escaped and was able to make her way back to her aunt's house, soaking wet and with covered in bruises. Um, so Josephine Tey is the pseudonym of Elizabeth McIntosh, a Scottish author and playwright born in 1896, died in 1952. So an intensely private woman. She was quite sick for the last year of her life, but it came as a complete shock to her friends that when they were notified she had actually died, because she had not let any of them know. She was somebody who was kept her life extremely compartmentalized. So it's kind of a fascinating figure that way. It's actually been turned into a novel of a mystery series in itself by an author. So I come to this book from having read Sarah Waters' The Little Strangers, a 2009 kind of gothic novel, which is set in the same time period as this book. Sarah Waters has sort of talked about this book as being one of the influences, and it definitely kind of shares common themes. So the book is listed as number 3 in Tey's Inspector Grant series. He is Inspector of Scotland Yard, but in this novel, Grant only plays an extremely minor part in the novel, appearing briefly, but he's not the main character. So this can really be seen as a standalone novel, and indeed, it's my first Josephine Tey mystery, I guess, crime novel, not mystery novel, but crime novel. I guess we parse those things along. So the main character is a lawyer, Robert Blair, who gets a call from Marion Sharp, the daughter, saying that they've had some troubles, and that Scotland Yard is at their house now, and they need some legal. Then she needs some legal advice, and she knows his name, and would he come over? And he tries to kind of pass it off, because Robert Blair is a very kind of comfortable. Someone who's very comfortable in his life, but he's not a criminal lawyer. He is somebody who is, very much more into kind of property, doing wills, stuff like that. And it's like, why would I do this thing? But Marion is strangely quite persuasive, and kind of charms him, intrigues him, and he ends up kind of coming over. They lead Betty Kane through this very secluded house of that is the franchise, which is it's this really kind of this house that's out in the middle of nowhere, and as it says in the book, the place was as relevant, as isolated as a child's toy dropped by the wayside. They've inherited the Sharps have inherited it from a rich uncle. They were living fairly kind of they're running a boarding house before this. So, but despite that, they're definitely, you get the sense of them being kind of the upper echelons of society, very much above kind of the serving classes and stuff like that. And it's one of these things where Blair quickly soon takes the case. He becomes obsessed with proving the innocence of Marion and her eccentric, regal mother, and the mendacity of this seemingly innocent war orphan, Betty Kane, their accuser, what is kind of who's termed as like a transparently truthful girl. Quiet. It's never ever gotten in any kind of trouble. Yet at the same time, Blair immediately kind of notices something disquieting about her. I think he notes that, like, after she's done her thing, he just catches a glimpse of her face, and 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 is said, it's like, it was a, the look on her face, it was a savage emotion, primitive and cruel. Um, but the thing is with this novel is that Blair might have his suspicions and his seemingly prejudices against Betty Kane, this seemingly transparently innocent girl, but both Marion and his mother are very kind of odd kind of people. Mrs. Sharp says, talking about Milford, where they're sort of the area where they're in. But at my age, Milford does not provide even that distraction. I am reduced to pouring weed killer on weeds, a legitimate form of sadism on par with drowning fleas. Do you drown your fleas, Mr. Blair? It's like, okay, sadism comes up. There's and Miss Sharp again, when she finally is kind of gets introduced to Betty Kane, who's been taken through the house and seems to point out a lot of things that she shouldn't be able to know about this house. When Mrs. Sharp gets face to face with her, she sort of fixes her with a kind of a steely eye, and her thing is, for two people who are on beating terms, we are distressingly ill-acquainted, she said at last. I hope to know you much better before this affair is finished, Miss Kane. It's like she is an odd woman whose first question on, having met Kane is like, is the girl a virgin? Which is like, and Blair's like, whoa, what kind of question is that? And he expects Marion to be like, oh, mother, but no, she doesn't seem to do anything. But, she's Miss Sharp is like, well, that would be the first, if my girl had been missing for this long, that would be my first question. Is she still a virgin? So it's very much, there's this disquieting kind of odd feeling about these two women, and indeed when Blair kind of consults with a friend of his, Kevin McDermott, a kind of a barrister, he says, like, well, there's been stranger thing that women have gotten, old, slightly older women have gotten up to in cases like these. So it's not within the realm of possibility that indeed that these two are guilty. And it's interesting because using Blair as the focal point, the protagonist of this novel, is good, because at the very beginning, he says, like, Robert Blair, hoped very heartedly that his life would go on being what it was until he died. So he's like, I'm settled into my groove. I've got this kind of boring, kind of very kind of just, doing kind of just settling wills and estates and stuff like that practice. He's pampered by, he's got a housekeeper who an aunt who pampers him, kind of, serves him and stuff like that. So he is extremely comfortable. But for some reason, this case just activates him. He becomes romantically interested in Marion. He becomes almost kind of like, obsessed with kind of unearthing what he views is going to be the dirt on Betty Kane, that he's just positive that Betty Kane is just sort of this seething kind of this, primitive and cruel girl that he's going to figure out. And I mean, he's fed in this because, Marion immediately, says like, because notes that Betty has pale blue eyes, and it's like, it's the thing of, let me get to it. But yes, so yeah, Marion believes that, Betty is oversexed due to her opaque, dark blue eyes, very like faded navy, man or woman, that's a sign of being oversexed. And there's a couple of things where a police officer indeed says, oh, killers have these kind of eyes as well. Though he has to admit he's only met a few killers, so he hasn't really been able to test his theory. So we have all this stuff. Now this case gets further complicated because it seems to be a bit of a stalemate, but a tabloid, the Ac Emma, sticks its oar in. This is a British tabloid that operating under the great tradition of, well, if we can sell enough newspapers, it's worth any libel cases that might be set against us. So, we'll print anything if it's salacious and kind of enough. And indeed, they with the cooperation of Betty's brother, who feels like the police haven't been doing enough to prosecute the Sharps, publishes a thing which is completely prejudiced against the Sharps, and indeed fires up the entire community, where they are harassed. The house gets broken into. There's like lots, they're in real danger throughout the novel, that way, just from the angry people around. And we were definitely getting, kind of the ideas of kind of class system of these two women who are living in a mansion, having been accused of beating what's a fairly kind of lower class girl, who doesn't want the whole kind of conundrum of, you can't find servants to serve in old isolated houses anymore. The girls want to get jobs at factories where they can, they can have fun, they can have independence. This is very much looking at something like The Little Stranger, is this kind of changing landscape of British society. Of the underclass is not willing to serve the overclass as much anymore, and if they are, it's going to be on a lot better terms than it was before. There's it's so we get that. It's interesting reading this book in 2020 of, the hashtag Me Too and stuff like that. Of, this is very much a book of like, oh, why would we trust this girl? She's obviously oversexed and a bad seed. Where, we live in an age where it's, it's believe the woman. I mean, this is a case where it's like, it's women on both sides of the thing, but there's also just that thing of like, kind of Betty Kane, whether she is innocent or guilty in this case, is very much kind of used as this kind of focal point of anxiety in the society for the change that is happening. And she's kind of seen as this, at least depicted by Blair, as very much kind of this amoral, voracious kind of center that's scary, that's going to like harm the people that he's developing feelings for. And we get and this is Josephine Tey is really good at playing with that ambiguity of setting up the Sharps, and you're just like, there's enough kind of a little alarm bells going on there. It's like, maybe they did kidnap this girl on the one side, whereas Betty is sort of a little bit of a blank slate, at least through a lot of the novel. As it goes along, as we're tracking down stuff, of course, it gets more complicated. Now, this is kind of an older novel, so it does kind of lag at certain points. There does have to be that kind of groundwork where they have to kind of grind through the search, the continual search to try and dig up something about Betty Kane to muddy the waters at the very least, or to undermine her story, or try and find the weak spots. So there is a bit of a grind there. I guess that's just sort of the procedural thing of a crime novel. Your mileage may vary on how engaging that is. There were some points where it did lag for me a bit. It is great coming to this novel from The Little Stranger, because that was a book that was very much concerned with a house-rich family in a secluded home, and this an outsider coming in that case a doctor, and just how that kind of that pushed into life, and it kind of peeled back things about, and kind of told you things about the society. I think Sarah Waters, probably from benefit of distance, and also bet that she's kind of going at it from a gothic novel thing, where this is definitely more of a crime novel thing, where the I think the kind of the social commentary is a little bit more of the byproduct onto the side for the, and we're focused on the the was it done aspect of this. It's interesting at the end that the male characters are a little bit more gleeful of when they feel like they've gotten stuff, they've gotten it, whereas there's the female characters in here have a little bit more of a sympathy, a little bit more of like, oh, that's really really terrible for that's terrible for the loved ones and stuff like that. You know, it's sort of that thing of you get the sense of there's a certain commentary going on here about misogyny, about how you know especially and misogyny, just in society in general, how we're eager to take something, evil females, whether that's evil Sharps or evil Betty Kane, and just hammer it home because this is something larger and we've decided to use this as a symbol. So yeah, it's a book with kind of nicely kind of elegant disquiet. There's a certain kind of just a wicked delight in pulling back all the bland and respectable veneer of kind of a stuffy English society to show kind of all the roiling anxieties and just desires underneath. But still always, within the structure of a crime novel. So, we have the legal system. There's a court case here. We're keeping things on one level safe, but on another level, we're showing those peaks of just, of how it is. And, there's always a question in this book, is Blair getting used? Is Blair getting used throughout this novel, just by his own male kind of feeling of, I want to be the white knight? It's like you get that sense that maybe he's been taken advantage of that way, which adds just yet another little layer on there of what's happening here. So yeah, I'm glad. There's sometimes when you kind of bounce from one novel to another that it's a fun experience. You're taking a little trip, and it's nice to take something that Sarah Waters is obviously maybe a bit of a grist for her mill for making her novel, that you get to go back to that novel and you go, oh, and it's that you get to read. I'm getting to read the Franchise Affair through the lens of the Little Stranger, and perhaps makes it that much richer of a reading experience for myself. So yes, reading adventures. All right, more videos later.